Hello and welcome to Astro Hi-Fi. My name is Gabby Turner, and in this video I'm going to be looking at the full moon on October 9th, 2022 with the full moon at 16 degrees and 33 minutes of Aries. Of course, always when we're looking at a full moon, the sun is going to be exactly opposite. Let me erase our smiley face here. And so we're going to focus primarily here on that opposition and the conjunction that the moon itself has to Chiron here in Aries. The sun over here in Libra at 16 degrees 33 minutes of Libra is conjunct to Venus. So we'll be talking about the dynamic between the sun and the moon with these conjunctions to Venus and Chiron that they're making. And I also want to mention the T-square aspect that the sun and the moon are collectively going to be making with the Asteroid Palace and with black moon Lilith, which is not an asteroid, and I'll explain a little bit more about what, in terms of astronomical and astrological terms, what Lilith is, and also what she represents symbolically. But the overall theme I get just of this dynamic, again, we're looking at the sun and the moon with Venus and Chiron, and then that collective energy as it forms this T-square with Pallas and black moon Lilith. The theme I get here is strategic fights and impulsive flights. So there's a little bit of a fight or flight response coming out with the energy of this full moon. Now there's more to it than just that, but that's sort of the overall theme that I am getting. So first let's talk about the fact that the moon is in a conjunction to Chiron. So the full moon, which is lit with the sun's energy, is in the sign of Aries, conjoining Chiron. I personally see Chiron as the ruler of Virgo, which really helps me to open up the symbolism of what Chiron represents. So a lot of times we hear astrologers refer to Chiron as the wounded healer. But if that were the case, then you would expect people with Chiron very prominent in their chart to be wounded healers, right? Such as someone like Elon Musk, who actually has Chiron, I think actually in Aries, Chiron conjunct his midheaven. Well, if our midheaven represents our public reputation and what we have the most renown for, how in the world would the wounded healer archetype fit into Elon Musk's personal reputation? I'm not saying that he could not embody that archetype in some way. To some degree we all do, but it's certainly not what he's known for. What he is most known for is Tesla and SpaceX. So if we think of it in those terms, then Chiron being the ruler of Virgo makes a lot more sense there, with Chiron being on Elon Musk's midheaven. He's someone who is a pioneer, which is what the sign of Aries is about. He is someone who is a pioneer in an industry, electric vehicles with Tesla, that is intended to make improvements to the environment. And Virgo is all about making improvements and making adjustments. Whether or not you agree that electric cars have that outcome, that's obviously the intended outcome. So anyway, we could go on and on here, but I feel like, when we open up Chiron as being related to, or the ruler of, the sign of Virgo, to me at least, in my personal interpretations as an astrologer, it really helps me to understand what Chiron really represents in transit a lot better, or even in natal charts. But in any case, all right, so the moon is here with Chiron, which represents these Virgo characteristics of perfection, service, and attending to ongoing needs. Those type of tasks that are never truly complete, right? So washing the dishes, doing the laundry, right? Virgo And therefore Chiron, which I see as the ruler of Virgo, is interested in those things, because the mythological centaur Chiron was forever improving his own skill set as a healer through the ongoing process of tending to his own incurable wound. So he also had this ongoing chore that he was always trying to perfect. It's a very Virgo energy. So the moon is here in Aries conjunct Chiron. And because the moon is in Aries, she wants to focus on herself. This is a me time sort of energy. But it's a me time for the sake of self-care and self-improvement, not for selfishness. But moon in Aries is going to want to focus on itself. And because there's that conjunction to Chiron, it's self-focus for the purpose of healing, for the purpose of perfecting oneself, for the purpose of self-improvement, making necessary adjustments, that sort of thing. So there is that emphasis here with this full moon in Aries. And you could look at your own particular chart and see where these 14 and 16 degrees of Aries fall by house. And that might give you a further indication of where maybe you would want or be compelled to be self-focused in that way. All right. So then we want to look at this opposition here, right, to the Sun and Venus in Libra. So because this is an opposition, oppositions always sort of challenge each other, but challenge each other in a way that seeks harmony at the same time. It's sort of like a seesaw. We can think of an opposition in that way. So at a full moon, there's a certain heightened energy here because the sun and the moon are facing off, but they're also ping-ponging back and forth. They're trying to understand each other, right? So the interest in self-focus is challenged by the sun in Libra. Libra is a sign of balance. It's a sign of harmony. It's about considering the other. It's the opposite of a self-focus. It's an other focus or a we focus. It's not me, it's we, when we're in the energy of Libra. And not only that, but the sun is conjoined with Venus, who is the planetary ruler of Libra. So there's an extra punch of that Libran energy here. Asking, yes, maybe it's a time for self-focus, but what about others? Of course, that's always the balance that we have to strike, right? When we're trying to focus on ourselves, it's impossible to entirely focus on ourselves. It's also impossible to entirely focus on the other, but this opposition here of the sun and the moon in these signs is asking us to take these things into consideration. So it's a bit of a tug and pull, asking us how much time we are capable of committing to our own needs when the needs of others are shining in our faces. So that's the challenge here. And like I said, I also want to bring in the symbolism here of the Asteroid Palace and also of Black Moon Lilith. Let's start with Palace and describing her energy. This asteroid, like the goddess for whom she was named, symbolizes wisdom, bravery, and battle strategy. When the Asteroid Palace was discovered, Saturn and Jupiter were conjoined, with Saturn at 1 degree Virgo, Jupiter at 26 Leo, and opposing Mars and Pluto, with Mars at 23 Aquarius and Pluto at 6 Pisces. So I'm just putting those, when we discover an asteroid or a planet or any type of planetary body, looking at the discovery chart for the moment that it was discovered tells us also something about the energy of what that asteroid or other planetary body represents. So here with these particular placements in Palace's discovery chart, this is what I gather from her energy. When we connect with Palace, We understand that the best strategic way to defend ourselves and those we love is through patience, keen observation, a willingness to self-sacrifice, and with courage that is fueled by a capacity to envision ourselves as a hero among heroes. When all of those qualities align, we can take carefully calculated action that seems so precise that it's as though the crosshairs of our metaphorical weapon have been aligned by the gods themselves. So this is the energy of Pallas. In other words, when we take aim with Pallas energy, we will blow our enemy away because she is so precise. She is so strategic. All right, so that is what Pallas represents. I'm going to tie it all together here, but let's talk about Lilith as well before we can do that. So Black Moon Lilith in astrology refers to the furthest point of the moon's orbit from Earth. Like the north and the south node, this point is not an actual physical body, but a calculated point in space. True Lilith, which is also known as oscillating Lilith, refers to the exact placement of this orbital point at any given moment, but that point moves about very quickly and erratically. So because of that, for ease of sort of tracking her movement through the zodiac, we also have something called mean Lilith, which is symbolized here in this chart. This is mean Lilith's placement as of this full moon on October 9th, 2022. And this represents a sort of averaged out placement of the more erratic energies of what is known as true Lilith. They both are referred to as Black Moon Lilith, but there's the true Lilith, which I don't have presented here on the chart, and then there's the averaged out Lilith. Most astrologers, when they're referring to Black Moon Lilith, are referring to this point here, the averaged out version of her. Some astrologers think that averaging Lilith's placements goes against the wild nature of her archetype, since Lilith was the first wife of Adam, the one who left in a fury because she was not willing to be submissive. And that was an expectation of her marriage. And she was not able to negotiate more respect for herself. She wasn't able to negotiate anything other than submission. That's the only thing that he would accept. So she fled. And she was punished severely for that wildness. She was punished for fleeing, for refusing to submit. And her punishment was that she was forced to become the mother of all demons, and also forced to kill a portion of those demon children every day. So in my personal opinion, if we want to look at this mean Lilith, mean meaning average, like mean median mode from the days of early arithmetic or whatever, your grade school mathematics, the averaged out Lilith, to me, it makes a lot of sense because that averaging out is a form of constraint of Lilith. And in her own myth, she was constrained. I mean, that she was severely punished. And I think a lot of us can relate to that when we refuse to submit, when we're insubordinate in some way. We usually do have to also face the consequences. But the energy of Lilith is the part of us that is so willful and so rebellious that despite the fact that we will likely be punished, we're going to rebel anyway. And we see that in the world in so many ways. People who protest certain things knowing that they're going to be arrested, right? But they do it anyway because their conscience doesn't, is that the right word, or consciousness? Their conscience does not allow them not to do that. It can be the teenager who's living in an abusive home and runs away from home. They know that their parent who is controlling is going to find them and probably punish them severely, but they do it anyway, right? That's the energy of Lilith. She is the sort of sacred rage that we experience when we know that what is happening is wrong and we cannot sign on to it. Even if signing on to what is abhorrently wrong would make our lives easier, it's still wrong. And if we look at that myth, the continuation of it, Eve ended up being punished too, right? She was the subordinate wife, and in the end, she ended up being punished as well. There's always some sort of fault to find. So Lilith is the part of us that's like, listen, if there's going to be some SHIT coming down on my head regardless, I'll just choose freedom. I will be insubordinate. So that's what Lilith represents to me. I think all of the Liliths have some meaning, because even the true Lilith that is still wild, the Lilith that has yet to have been punished, that is an important part of our experience as well. There are moments when we can rebel in these extreme ways, and we can avoid punishment, right? That does happen. There are other Liliths as well. There is an asteroid Lilith, and there's an additional fourth Lilith, which is thought to be a possible second moon. So those would be actual physical bodies. So the asteroid Lilith we do know for sure exists, but the theoretical presence of this second moon, which is called Waldemath Lilith, I don't think that's really confirmed yet, but it's something that people theorize about. But we don't need to go into all of that. I just wanted to explain a little bit about Lilith and her symbolism, as well as sort of like, what Black Moon Lilith is, again, in those astronomical terms. All right. So these two are conjunct, right? Pallas and Black Moon Lilith. They're here together in 14 and 19 degrees of the sign of Cancer, squaring off against the sun and the moon. Pallas and Lilith both represent bold femininity, but they carry it very differently. Where Pallas observes and plans, with her war maps laid out on the table before her, Lilith reacts to perceived threats with an impulsive and primal rage response. So the pain that Lilith inflicts is that of being forced to recognize how useless you are to her. So anyway, while Pallas meticulously plans out how to enter the battle arena, Lilith escapes the arena with a fury over ever having been put there to begin with. But of course, only later to then be imprisoned for treason. So these asteroids are conjunct in the sign of Cancer, combining their qualities with the need to protect ourselves, because that's the primary focus of Cancer, is self-protection of ourselves and our closest loved ones, our loved ones who are our family and tribe. We seek emotional security and physical security, all forms of security. That's what Cancer seeks for the self and for those we consider family and tribe. So how will we find that security? That's what this full moon seems to ask us. Will we find our security through strategic fights, like Pallas, or through impulsive flights? Or because these two energies are together, will it be some sort of combination of the two somehow? So to tie Pallas and Lilith back to the full moon, to which they are at the point of a T-square, as I've mentioned, this is a time where there is a great tension between heroics and self-preservation. Do we want to be the hero, or do we simply want to kind of take care of our own personal needs? Can we do what's best for ourselves as individuals and be the hero for others simultaneously? What a task. Not to be cliche, but I think the answer may come down to you are going to have to put the oxygen mask on yourself first. Of course, there's no specific answer to any of these questions or themes. We're all individuals. We'll all be experiencing the energy of this full moon differently. And for each of us, our approach to it will be different. But this is a theme that I do see coming to a head at this particular full moon in Aries on October 9th. You can let me know in the comments how you are experiencing this. Where does this full moon fall in your own chart? And how do you see that playing out for you? Thank you so much for joining me for this reading of the chart of the full moon on October 9th, 2022. I hope to see you back in the future.